As a science journalist, I've always been fascinated by the workings of the mind. And today I've come to Royal Holloway, University of London, to scan my brain before embarking on a 6-week brain-altering course.
Just taking a moment to settle into this posture.
Él es Thorsten van Hoffa, profesor de psicología clínica en la Universidad de Surrey. Actualmente dirige un estudio sobre los efectos de la atención plena en el manejo del estrés y las emociones difíciles. También ha estado investigando cómo la atención plena cambia la estructura real del cerebro, que muestra signos de cambios neuroplásticos incluso después de unas pocas semanas. Pero, ¿funcionará en el cerebro de la periodista Melissa Hogenboom?
We're about to enter the fMRI scanner to see what my brain looks like from the inside.
Van a escanear el cerebro de Melissa Hogenboom antes y después de un periodo de hacer solo 30 minutos de meditación al día.
Hi Melissa, how are you?
Yeah, good.
So all you need to do is just relax, try to keep still and look at the fixation cross.
Okay.
And it'll last for about 15 minutes.
El proceso toma su tiempo, pero ¿qué es exactamente la neuroplasticidad?
Plasticity is the ability of the brain to change based on stimuli that is given.
These are the basis of learning and memory.
It's a really dynamic process that involves the whole brain, and something else really fascinating that we've only learned recently, the brain will even change its structure.
Our brain is constructed from 1 billion of neurons, and when neurons fire together, it's called wire together, they become stronger, and the connection between them is becoming stronger.
These can change and shift a lot more in the early years of life than they can as we get older. Of course, they're still changeable later on.
And that's really what we call brain plasticity, the ability of the brain to keep reorganizing itself throughout the lifespan.
That affects the functional networks in the brain, and a functional change will be what areas of the brain are connected to what areas. There's also a structural part of plasticity, mainly changes in how the areas are organized in the brain, whether areas are more dense or less dense.
Well, neuroplasticity actually is the mechanism through which the brain repairs itself. And now there are many ways to harness and boost plasticity in patients with neurological disorders.
Así que la neuroplasticidad, la respuesta del cerebro al cambio, en realidad ocurre todo el tiempo. Pero también tenemos el poder de influir en esto hasta cierto punto. Cada vez más estudios sugieren que puede desempeñar un papel importante retrasando enfermedades cerebrales degenerativas como la demencia. También puede ayudarnos a reconfigurar el cerebro después de un trauma psicológico. Al volver al escáner, le muestran a Melissa una serie de números. Así prueban su memoria de trabajo.
There will be other processes underneath the working memory process that get interesting. So mind wandering will happen, and if mind wandering happens or it comes close to it, there will be a certain brain system that becomes more active.
Mind wandering is something that, of course, might be helpful in many ways. It might help us with creativity, but it's also something that can go awry. And this is where repetitive thinking comes in, where ruminative thinking comes in, where worry comes in. And those are the factors which increase stress. Stress hormones, for example, cortisol, it will go up. And if levels of cortisol remain high, that can actually become toxic for your brain, for regions of your brain which are very plastic.
Esto demuestra que el estrés, entre muchas otras cosas, es un inhibidor directo de la neuroplasticidad. El primer truco cerebral consiste en respirar. Durante las siguientes 6 semanas, Melissa va a dedicar tiempo a aprender a ser lo más consciente posible del momento presente y ver qué impacto tiene la atención plena en su cerebro.
So what mindfulness does is it can buffer stress. You become aware of challenges. Those more ruminative responses, a tendency to worry. We can't take away the pain of any stressful situation, but there's a sense of us being able to choose what the next step is. So the very first step within this is to say, yes, let's come back from this complexity to something that is relatively simple and stay with that.
Después de 6 semanas de realizar una meditación guiada por Thorsten, Melissa se sintió mucho más tranquila, pero se pregunta si este sentimiento se mostrará como un cambio físico en su cerebro.
We'll see.
Después de otro escaneo cerebral, fue a la Universidad de Surrey para averiguarlo.
This is very exciting to see my brain on the screen.
That's your brain, yes.
Do you see any results in my brain?
Yes, of course. We see changes.
So what have you found?
We looked at the amygdala, that's in light blue, one of each in each hemisphere, and they are very important for emotional processing. And we see change in that region, particularly...
You do see change?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the right amygdala is reduced in volume, and that's what you would expect as a stress reduction effect. So it gets bigger the more stressed we are. It's increased in people suffering from depression or anxiety disorders, and with mindfulness training we see that reducing in volume, and there's a hint of that in your data.
And I wasn't very stressed to begin with, but even so we see a tiny decrease, which is, I think that's quite exciting.
Exactly, yeah.
Pero ese no fue el único cambio que vio en el cerebro de Melissa Hogenboom. También encontró cambios en la corteza cingullar posterior, una región involucrada en el control de la divagación y la cavilación.
What was interesting to us was that we see an increase in the posterior region of this.
What's that?
Yes, in the darker blue. It's part of a wider distributed network in the brain, which is referred to as the default mode network. The system comes online when our mind wanders, and of course that's something which is very central to meditation. And we have seen in previous studies changes in this region, and that's exactly what we find in your data also, a small change in that direction.
Did it increase in size or decrease?
It increased in size, which should be an indication of an increased control.
So literally just by being mindful, I managed to increase a part of my brain that prevents my mind wandering too much.
Plasticity means that there's constant flux, so we would imagine that consistent input is needed.
So it sounds like I need to continue meditating and come back and see you in a year, and then we'll see some really significant things.
We would recommend, yes.
Es sorprendente que en tan solo unas pocas semanas hubo un cambio visible en el cerebro de Melissa. Pero, ¿podrá Melissa seguir meditando en el futuro? En la vida real, conseguir este tiempo adicional puede resultar complicado. A Melissa le encantaría poder lograrlo.